The film opens with our lead, Michael Atwood, who is asked to steal some shady documents from a bank for a Russian mafia, whose leader has been arrested. For the heist, Michael teams up with his stepbrothers, Russell and Gabe, and two cops named Marcus and Jorge. On the other hand, we get to see the mafia leader's wife, Irina Vlaslov. Currently, she's spending time with her sister Elena and her son. She's interrupted by her men, who have captured and tortured some men for crossing Irina. Scenes briefly show a detective named Chris Allen, who arms himself and leaves for work. In the meantime, Michael's gang also arms itself. They put on masks and arrive at the bank in a fortified truck. Russell keeps the truck running while the others barge into the bank. They open fire and force the manager to unlock the Russian man's locker, which contains the documents. While Michael deals with the documents, Gabe steals some cash. Thinking they've succeeded, they steal a van outside the bank and flee. When they get on the highway, the bag with the stolen money releases red smoke, which fills their van. Their vision becomes unclear, and they cause a horrific accident on the highway, which draws the attention of the patrolling police. Michael's group opens fire to scare away the public and burn their van to eliminate proof of existence. They steal another car and flee. They unite at a parking space, where Marcus and Jorge gang up on Gabe for stealing the money, as it was not part of their plan. Michael breaks their fight and sets fire to the car they escaped in. Gabe and Russell return to their place, where Russell fears that Gabe's stolen money will bring them trouble. Later, Russell joins Michael on his way to deliver the stolen documents to their recruiters, the Russians, who use a meat shop as a front. Back in the robbed bank, Detective Jeffrey comes to investigate the heist. He questions the manager, who was taken hostage by Michael. Jeffrey becomes curious upon learning that the robbers didn't steal money. So he gets the locker information checked out and finds out that it belongs to a Russian millionaire named Dmitry. On the other hand, Michelle drops Chris off at his precinct, where his sergeant is already asking other detectives about the gang that robbed the bank. Marcus and Jorge also arrive there, pretending not to know anything. Their sergeant, after collecting information from the hostages, tells his detectives that the robbers were heavily armed and spoke Spanish, which narrows down their search. Since Chris is new, the sergeant pairs him with Marcus so he can get familiar with their cases. Marcus kind of takes the lead and keeps Chris in the shadows. On the other hand, Michael talks to someone on the phone and burns his SIM card after that. Following the phone call, he reaches outside Irina's place, where her security guard thoroughly checks him. Once free of suspicion, he's taken inside, where Irina unites Michael with his son. Through Irina and Michael's conversation, we find out Irina's sister, Elena, is married to Michael. Irina kidnapped her own sister and nephew to coerce Michael into stealing her husband's documents from the bank, indicating how she has no soul left in her. She still refuses to free Michael's family and forces him to steal some evidence from Homeland Security, which proves Dmitry guilty of his crimes. Irina intends to erase all evidence and make Dmitry a free man again. Compromised badly, Michael agrees to do Irina's dirty work. Later that evening, she contacts Dmitry, who has the privilege of using a phone in prison. It is revealed that he's the one making Irina do everything in the name of love. At night, Michael calls everyone in his group and asks them for their support in another heist. When the boys meet up, they argue with Michael over payment and force him to get Irina to pay them for the previous heist first. During this, Russell's car arrives and hits the wall. The group becomes concerned and runs towards the car with their guns pointed at it. Inside the car, they find a tortured Russell, whose stomach has been cut open by Irina's people to send them a message in case they ever try to cross her. Gabe acts out the most since Russell is his brother, so they take him away and shoot Russell to end his misery. Marcus and Jorge suggest involving the cops now that things have gotten serious with Russell's death. On the other hand, Elena gets a call from Michael, but she hands her phone to Irina. The same night, Jeffrey sits down with a fellow detective and observes Michael's gang through the CCTV footage. He judges their gunmanship and figures out that they have a military background. The next day, Michael convinces everyone to execute the second heist to save them from Irina's wrath. Marcus and Jorge suggest pulling a 999, which Michael doesn't understand and asks to shed light on the concept. Elsewhere, Chris is taken to a crime scene, where the perp has beheaded 3 Spanish men and left the cops a warning. Chris approaches some witnesses for inquiry reasons, but ends up getting into a fight with them since he still has trouble controlling his emotions. Marcus and Jorge are also there, so they begin arresting the boys for assaulting a cop. Marcus then sides with Chris and warns him not to get involved with the men outside, for they are dangerous people. The following night, Michael's gang unites and Marcus and Jorge tell them the meaning behind 999. 999 is a broadcast to signal the cops that an officer has been shot. They decide to pull a fake 999 to get all available police units to their assistance so they can go against the Russians. On the other hand, Jeffrey visits Chris and Michelle at their place. He privately talks to Chris about the bank heist they're investigating and makes him aware of Michael's gang, along with the fact that they have a bigger motive behind their heist. The same night, Elena returns to Michael's place with her son, so Michael threatens her to arrange a meetup with Irina so he can confront her about Russell's death. The next day, Irina sees him along with his child, so he behaves and asks Irina what he has to do to free himself of her. Chris also starts observing the old footage from when Michael's group opened fire on civilians during the highway incident. Michelle tries to talk him out of his work, but he doesn't budge. Michael and the others reunite at a sauna and discuss their plan to involve the cops. When Michael drives Gabe home, he shows signs of skepticism about his involvement in the heist, so Michael scolds him harshly and kicks him out of his car. As days pass, Chris and Marcus are sent to a ghetto neighborhood to gather information on the perps who beheaded the Spanish men. Chris doesn't get along at first, but eventually gets used to the way of approaching people without getting them mad. Jeffrey also begins his interrogation in the hood. From someone, he finds out about Gabe's girlfriend, who kept venting about Gabe's bank robbery last night. This gives Jeffrey enough information to dig up Gabe's personal files. On the other hand, Chris and Marcus track down the perp and call in reinforcements to arrest the perp at his home. The perp flees from there, leaving behind an infant. The cops chase the perp on the street, where Chris gets shot but is saved by his bulletproof Kevlar. Marcus stops to check up on him, but Chris tells him to follow the perp instead. Marcus goes after the man who shot Chris and catches him in an alley. Chris gets back on his feet and goes after Marcus. When he sees that the perp is about to stab Marcus with a knife, he shoots the perp. Marcus gives his testimony in Chris's favor, so he is only called to the investigation room for a confession and is later set free. While he takes out Marcus for a thank you drink, Michael meets Irina at a private restaurant, where she reveals that she sent Elena and her son to Israel. She threatens Michael to execute the heist to save Elena from getting assassinated in Israel, not caring that Elena is her sister. We also get to see Gabe for a moment, who has lapsed into depression and isn't doing well after Russell's cruel death. At night he approaches Marcus at an adult club, where Marcus doesn't want to be seen with Gabe since he's hanging out with his cop friends. He takes Gabe outside and brutally kicks him multiple times. After being treated like this, Gabe decides to confess to the cops about the bank heist. Marcus becomes angry and tries to beat him up, but Chris arrives to check up on him. Marcus immediately lies to him about Gabe being his informant and sends Gabe away. He returns home and picks up a fight with his girlfriend outside his place, oblivious to the fact that Jeffrey and his fellow detectives are keeping an eye on him through the surveillance cameras. The next day, Jeffrey finds out from his detective friend that Gabe used to be a cop and was kicked out of the force after a questionable shooting incident. He becomes suspicious of Gabe and gets his detectives to keep a sharp eye on him. Through them, he learns that Gabe has been circling around Chris's house. Since Chris is his nephew, Jeffrey rushes to his house to save him, but Gabe escapes from there before their arrival. Jeffrey gets a call from his detective, who has finally got his hands on Gabe and Russell's criminal record. As days pass, Michael prepares to invade Homeland Security. First, he threatens Gabe to join him in the heist by taking his girlfriend hostage. In a precinct full of cops, Jeffrey lays out his plan to capture Michael's gang. Michael is aware of Jeffrey and his nephew Chris, so he sends Marcus to mislead Chris and keep him tangled in other stuff. While Michael and his team head to the Homeland Security Department, Marcus takes Chris to an abandoned building for a fake investigation. In reality, he has tipped some assassins to take out Chris. When Marcus flees from there, Gabe shows up to save Chris. He tries to tell him that he's being set up, but the assassins open fire at them. Chris updates the cops and tries to stop Gabe's bleeding, during which Marcus arrives to shoot Gabe for ruining his plan. Gabe shoots him first, due to which Chris broadcasts 999 and calls for all the available police units. Michael gets updated about the 999, so he immediately moves forward to invade the Homeland Security since all forces have been set out for Marcus. Jeffrey thinks the 999 has been activated for Chris, so he heads out to see him instead of eyeing Michael's gang. This allows Michael and Jorge to successfully steal Dimitri's evidence without getting caught. While Jeffrey becomes fully invested in Chris's case, Michael visits Irina to hand her the evidence. Irina agrees to pay him for the job but refuses to hand over Elena. Her men also point their guns at him, so he hands Irina a gift and asks her to give it to his son. In reality, there's a bomb inside the gift, which Michael detonates and kills Irina. When he visits Jorge to split the money, Jorge shoots him and takes all the money. On the other hand, Chris starts tracking down the men who shot Gabe. He teams up with Jeffrey, who tells him about Marcus's hand behind his assassination attempt. Chris visits the coma-induced Marcus in the hospital to vent his feelings about the betrayal, but Jorge arrives there and asks him to return to their precinct to make a report of the assassination. He agrees and heads out with Jorge. While they're in the elevator, Jeffrey calls Chris and makes him aware of Jorge's involvement in the heists. Chris cunningly brings Jorge to Jeffrey's car, where Jeffrey shoots him dead, but gets shot by Jorge as well. Chris activates 999 again and ends the film.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.